Hoi! Today we're making a tier list. We're making an item tier list for the current and also for the upcoming patch especially. So we're going to talk a little bit about the items that are going to get changed, and then we're going to look at the rest because there are plenty of things to say about those items as well, of course. Let's begin with the items that are receiving changes in the upcoming patch right away. The first one is Serrated Edge. Now Serrated Edge is getting a bit of an overhaul where it's meant to work better for all, well, assassins, I guess, in general. And I would say overall that function will be fulfilled, but the stats on the item are going to be a bit weird because it has relatively low base power now and then just gains power and lifesteal. I'm not quite sure how well that will work for some gods. For now, I'm going to put it in A+. I think it's going to be useful enough for those who already use it. Maybe some additional users that don't really want to use Titan's Bane, but I have to see how effective it is because there is still Titan's Bane and there are still other pen options as well. What I just briefly want to say here, by the way, S+, obviously super strong. S are your really good items. A+, slightly above average. A, average. B, below average or situational. And C, just generally bad items with very, very few use cases. I don't think we need D here because C kind of covers that for the most part. The next one is Height of the Enemy in Line. Now, Height of the Enemy in Line before this was easily S, if not S+, because it was just good for everyone, for every squishy, and it was still good for tanks as well because of the block stacks without conditions. Now I think it's more nuanced. I would say it's still above average, but only for those who can use it. So I will put it in A+. I will put it there because you can technically have 3 block stacks now, and especially on supports, that's relatively easy to get. So on solos, it should be decent enough to get as well in most situations, depending on the exact build. But I think for that value, it's good enough for A+ still, but for squishies, it's not nearly as good as it was before this patch. Then we have a change to Charged Bow that's being buffed, and that buffs Odysseus Bow as well. And Odysseus Bow before this was, in my opinion, an A tier item that was good, very good in late game, not that good in earlier stages. With the transition being a bit better on Charged Bow, I would say Odysseus Bow goes up as well. Potentially, it could be even better. We'll have to see how the builds turn out to be. But it's already working pretty well with like Silver Branch builds, and I imagine that combination, it might be very effective and might even go up to S or S+, even, who knows. But definitely one of those items to keep an eye on. Ikaival got a buff as well, which increased the duration. I don't think that really changes much of about the item though. I think Ikaival is a relatively situational item, and it's not exactly a prime hunter item at the moment, and I don't really see that changing. I'm happy to be surprised here, but I still think this is more of a situational counter choice than something that you would make staple in most hunter builds. Karen's Coin is getting a buff. Just gotta find it. We're gonna see. And that gives it price reduction as well as various HP 5 and MP 5 increases. And I honestly think this item is A at the moment. I don't think this is as bad as some people make it out to be. And I think this is actually going up to A+ as well. I think this is a very interesting item in the current state with all the benefits that it brings. And it also synergizes well with some other items that are getting buffs. And I think that overall, that's most definitely an interesting one to keep an eye on. Then we have Doom Orb. Doom Orb is also getting a buff. That's just a cost reduction from 3,000 to 2,850. I don't think this is really enough to warrant a massive shift in performance, but I would say it's around A. It's a solid item on any mage that makes good use of movement speed items, sort of movement speed builds. And it's a very good item for jungle mages, but it is at the moment overshadowed by lifesteal combinations for sure. Warlock's Staff is in a similar boat. It gets another price reduction after already getting some buffs over time. And I think it's around A right now. I think it has enough stats to be good, and especially on gods like Baba Yaga, it is, that there it would be better than A. But I do think there's more reason for others to start picking up as well, even though Ethereal Stuff is in the game. Maybe even to combine the two as well. Bulwark of Hope gets a buff which increases the trigger threshold from 30 to 40%, so you should get the effect a little bit more often. You can also look at it as a nerf, I guess. It's a tweak more than anything, really. I think this remains a situational item, and in many situations there are better items, but, there's the odd one out where you can use this effectively. Then we have Hardwood Emulate, which also gets a buff. I would have placed this in B beforehand, and I guess in a way this remains situational, but it's a lot more effective with, 5 magical defense for everyone around you. So I think this is an A tier item right now, especially because of the dominance of mages in the meta as well. If that remains the case, then I would say A tier is warranted here, and this is something that supports can easily pick up. Then we have Pestilence, which also gets a health increase, much like its counterpart Contagion. And I would say that these items are decent enough now. I would say they're more like, they obviously also situational in a way because you only build them as anti-heal, but I would say they're good items that can fit in more builds than before now, because the effective health is just increased, because both of them also have defenses on them. I would say that Contagion is probably still a bit weaker in terms of price point and performance. I would still leave that more towards B. Maybe, I guess if there was a B+, then Contagion would be B+ now. I think Pestilence is just a little bit better stat-wise than... Pestilence is better than Contagion, is what I'm saying. And we'll see how well these develop in the future. They're still not quite as good as the other anti-heal items, but that's more down to the other anti-heal items being very, very good. Mystical Mail gets a price reduction from 2,450 to 2,350. It is not the most favorite solo item at the moment, but I also think it's underrated. I think that Mystical Mail actually could go into A+. This is something that, this might be a little bit debatable. It might be something that goes back down to A. Maybe I'm overrating this buff. But I do think that it's been underrated for a long time. The damage output that you get through Mystical Mail without doing anything will always be massive, and I feel like it's often underestimated. There's always this thing, like people saying that it's only good in early game, but I really think that just consistent damage on the enemy team without any effort, any mana being used for it, anything else, is high value even into late game. And yeah, I could see why you would disagree with that, but that's just my personal take, and at the end of the day, tier lists are a little bit of a personal opinion. And that's bringing us to, let's look at the S+ tier real quick. I excluded the other consumables, but these two have to be in here. You know it, our awards. Just too good not to be on the list. And with that, we can move to normal items. I've included the starter items for Conquest here. I haven't included the other ones because, you're going to build them anyways, probably, unless you're playing very strategically. But with these ones, I think that's a little bit more of a discussion that's worth making. And Seeley. I think it's a nice counter item, but it's just too situational, especially because the range is relatively short and there are too many mages that can just pop it easily, and it makes it lose way too much effectiveness. Erendite, very strong item at the moment. Just a good mix of stats. Works on pretty much every assassin. Yeah, it's not quite an S item, I would say, but it's definitely a good A+ item. Maybe it's something we put at the start of A+, actually. RC, very standard sustain item for hunters. Not really much to say about it. It works well with Transcendence, but also not overwhelming. Solid A. Assassin's Blessing. Actually, in my opinion, for the first time in a long time, a decent item. I would say that Assassin's Blessing is no longer some like B tier, C tier level stuff because of all the stats that it has now. I would say it's just a solid A. Atalanta's Bow, definitely still one of the strongest items that we have, basically being built by every hunter up until this point still. It's just too effective. It's just Executioner 2.0, and I really don't see any reason to skip it, because it's even good on assassins as well, and basically taking assassins. Bancroft's Talon, definitely an A+ item at the moment, mostly because of its synergy with not with Ring of Hecate, with Typhon's Fang. Typhon's Fang got a little bit of a nerf, but I don't think it's going to destroy Typhon's Fang, so I think Bancroft's also stays around here. Without the synergy, I think it might still be A+, but it might also go down to A. It is a very strong item in terms of sustain, in terms of boxing, and some mages will always make good use of it, but then it can also be countered to some degree at least. Berserker's Shield, I think, is actually a pretty interesting solo item. I am tempted to put it either in A or A+. It does find its use, but then again, I don't think it's it's not above average. I mean, it looks weird when you see like Mystical Mail being put into A+, but again, this is more of a prediction, whereas Berserker Shield is more of this is where it's at, and it's not really changing. So yeah, we'll see. Blackthorn Hammer, not really that much benefit in it right now, not really much purpose. Sledge just does a lot of things better in my opinion, even though it's a different item of course, but yeah, I don't really see too much of a reason to build on most characters. Bloodforge, just a good item, solid item, nothing crazy at the same time. Book of Thoth, I would say it's still too situational. Like, it's just stacking power is just not that great at the moment because I think you just get more of just stacking lifesteal. And I would say that Warlock Staff with its survivability just has an edge over it at the moment. And Book of Thoth, sure, Baba Yaga again can use this, and some other mages can use this as well. But I feel like it's still, in many cases, not necessarily always, but in many cases, more situational. But at the same time, I'm also not fully in the picture about mage build at the moment. So I may be off here. It could also be an A item. It's like somewhere in between here. Maybe, yeah. No, I'll leave it here for now. It's not terribly misplaced along this item, but I think it's better than... Like, let's put it at the front of B, right? I think it's better than the other B items. I'm gonna order this a little bit here, so this makes a little bit more sense overall. Maybe like this. This is roughly what it would look like. Book of the Dead. Yeah, it's nice, but it's super situational. So very end of B, closer to C for sure. Brawler's Beatstick, extremely strong. Super usable on pretty much any assassin and some hunters, and counters healing very well. Nothing to say here really. I don't know. It's super strong because of the meta as well. This is otherwise I think it would be A+, but because there is so much lifesteal going around at the moment, anti-heal items just automatically get stronger, so that pushes up as well. Breastplate, with the introduction of Pridwen, really lost value. Very situational defense items. The stats are not bad, but it just doesn't really have a passive, and that sets it back a fair bit. Cat Shield, really nice in my opinion. Situational, otherwise I would put it even higher. Situational, of course, you need a healer on your team for it to be really effective, or a decent amount of self-heal. But dramatically undervalued in my opinion, and a very strong item in a lot of situations that just helps your team so much, and it's just better than its counterpart with Wrath of Asclepius, which just has worse stats overall. Oh god, now we're getting to the helmets. This one is Celestial Legion Helm. They all look the same to me all the time. Celestial Legion Helm is the stacking defense item. If I'm right on the... Just gotta make sure that I'm not messing up. Here's Jade, Emperor's Crown. Where's Lotus? Yeah, okay. Yep, all good. We got the right one. So yeah, this one, too situational. Very good against certain guards on some situations, but just too situational overall. Also more towards the front though of this. Not quite that bad, I would say. This also goes up a bit, I guess, around here. Chronos Pendant. Solid item for those who use CDR well. Solid late game item. Not much to say. Deathbringer. For the first time ever. Surprise, surprise. Probably the worst crit item. Or not, maybe not the worst necessarily, but the least used crit item at least. It's just not much of a point because the other crit items usually offer more, and that makes it situational. It's not terrible, and it's definitely not at the end of something, but yeah, it's right here, I would say. I know, a lot of people like to just build Deathbringer because big crits. But from an efficiency standpoint, I would say usually effect-wise and stat-wise, there are better crit options at the moment. I still like building Deathbringer myself, though, because it just gives you that big burst, which is really nice in some guns. Demonic Grip, very solid item. On its own, it's not crazy. It becomes better through synergy, I would say. But Demonic Grip is just a good shred item, and it does its job, but it's also not overly crazy stat-wise, say, compared to Atalanta's, for example. Devos... Probably also around A. It's just, it's just good. And it's, it could also be slightly above. It could be A plus as well when I think about it, but it's not really in need of a nerf or anything. No, it's just A. Divine Ruin, it's magical equivalent of Brother's Beatstick. I don't really need to say anything else. Emperor's Armor, super situational. Very rare use cases at the moment. Usually, actually just really beneficial in a coordinated team, and even there's just other things that work better right now. Like it's just not necessary because the play style in most situations isn't really warranted. Though it does have its use in casual, I would say. I think it's in defensive situations, it's definitely underrated. Ethereal Staff, in my opinion, is still a little bit above the point of balance, you know, above Warlock Staff. Just this steal mechanic, making it so useful for basically every magical character that wants to deal just a little bit of damage. Fail Not, I am tempted to almost put this as plus, because I think Fail Not is insanely good. The only reason why I'm not going to do that is because it's still a crit item in some variation. I would say it's probably even before Atalantis, because this item is good stat-wise. It's really good, and it does really well, and it's like a Jotun's Wrath with crit. Basically, it's percentage pen on a flat pen, so it's a bit different, which makes it scale almost better into late game. And yeah, I don't know. It's really weird. I don't know why this item exists in this form for so long. If this wasn't just Hunters, I know the Hunters would be complaining about it existing. Frostborn Hammer, cool item. Being picked up at some points. I would still put it under situational, but also one of those better situationals. Those cards who can make use of it make pretty good use of it, but it's very few. It's basically just Amaterasu and Vaman, as far as I'm aware. Gauntlet of Thebes, hands down the best support item. Hands down, you get that. I can honestly put this in S+. I think Gauntlet of Thebes is so good stat-wise that, like, there's no reason for a support to not build it unless you have a very, very, very specific plan. Like, 90% of all scenarios will include you building Gauntlet of Thebes at some point of the game, at least. And even in other roles, it can be beneficial, so there's that. So I think Gauntlet of Thebes is basically the best item in the game, but it's also okay because it is just a support item. Gem of Isolation, very conditional as well. There's very few mages that make use of it. Those are good with it, but it's just, yeah, not really generally applicable. Like some Guardians as well, by the way. Genji's Guard, I would say, well, this could be B or this could be A. It's like somewhere in between. Like, you get some guards that get pretty good use of it, and I think it's a bit more of a reliable choice. It's a nice item to finish off your build as well. Yeah, maybe with like Emoja in mind, for example, we could say that this is an A tier item. It remains somewhat situational, but not as situational as the B tier items. Glad Shield is weird since the change. I honestly barely see it being used by anyone, and I see very few situations where I'm actually like, oh yeah, I want Glad Shield. Whenever I get to that point, I'm like, no, I actually want Shifter Shield instead or something. Maybe on B as well, yeah. I don't think it's terrible. I think it's just very awkward to fit in. Golden Blade, very strong still. I would say even after the nerfs, it's probably an S tier item because it's towards the end of S tier, but it's probably still an S tier item because it just accelerates some guards clear so much, and it's so effective at that I would say it remains a very high tier item, and I think it needs nerfs as well. So actually it's better than the anti items. Guardian's Blessing, I would say also very balanced blessing. No complaints here. Actually pretty good. Question is if there's any blessing that I think is currently above or below A. Probably not. Hastened Katana is now super situational because it's got that other nerf as well, so maybe around here somewhere. It's really just Bakasura and Kali that want to use it, I think. It's just, if you can get around it somehow and your god doesn't 100% need it, I would not recommend building it based on the current stats. Hastened Ring, on the other hand, did not receive the same treatment. I would say that's probably better. It's hard to say because there's not that many gods that make use of it. But I would say, like, so the difference between Hastened Ring and Hastened Catania is, like, even though it's like the number of gods may be roughly similar that use it, though actually that might be more for Hastened Ring. No, it's probably more for Hastened Ring as well. And also the stats that come with this item are better. Like, it's not, you're not just building it for the passive, you're building it for the mix of the passive and the stats, whereas Hastened, you're just building it for just that passive, because everything else you could get something better. Heartseeker is still very, very strong. He got a little bit of a nerf, if I recall correctly. I would say it's probably a plus. Yeah, no, it's a plus. It's like, compared to like the S items, there are more builds that where you wouldn't run it. It's just on the guys that can run it well. They can just run it really well, but it's not like an Atalanta or something. However, the Urchin is situational. Yeah, if you can use it well, you can use it well, but it's not really that many. Hunter's Blessing. Yeah, I'm almost tempted. Yeah, no, it's A, actually. Considering Mage Hunters, Mage ADCs and stuff as well. Yeah, it's A. It's just solid. Hydra's Lament. Top-ish of B tier, maybe? No, I'm actually more middle-ish. Also very situational, not really frequently picked up because there's just mostly better choices at the moment. There are still some nice combos with Hydra, but we are more in a meta where you're just loading up on pen power, ability damage, and then you get, you know, the extra damage here and not here. It's just, yeah, it's just a bit more conditional before. Like, I mean, I guess Tsukuyomi brings it back a little bit, but even that is not a given. Like, it's not a core item on him either, so, yeah. Jadam, yeah, I would say that's situational. I'm trying to think, how often do you really build it? It's not, yeah, it's not bad, but it's also not something you'd frequently run. Jones Wrath is honestly A at the moment. It's not so commonly built anymore because there's other CDR options like Aeronite that you can combine with like pen items, and because Brawlers is just really good at the moment, really strong. But Jones is still a solid item for those who can use it well. Lonos is situational as they come. I'm like tempted to almost put it towards C tier. It got a buff. I haven't really felt much of a difference. We're going... No, maybe we just put it at the end here. Lotus Crown, situational item, but a good situational. Like, those who can use it well. Let's put it around... No, actually, it's better than that. It's better than that. Considering some healing characters can just work very well with this. We actually put this into A. Mage's Blessing, I think, is also A. There's nothing to say about it, really. And Magi's Cloak, also A. I feel like they could make the cooldown a little bit shorter again. But overall, I would say, you know, it's a counter item. And in those situations, it's very, very good sometimes. And other times, it just doesn't work well against the team. Mail of Renewal, situational, definitely. But not as bad as it used to be. It's, you know, it's being valued a little bit more in some situations, and we gotta give it credit there. It's not a C tier item at the moment. Malice, I would say A tier, very interesting in certain builds. Not much to say about it. Mantle of Discord, also a solid A item. Counters some gods very well. Midgard Email, definitely more situational, but also one of those good situationals. Maybe even like, well, how did Frostborn get at the front? Maybe around here somewhere. I think this is like a pretty good counter item, and it's gonna... No, actually, we're putting this up because it's gonna get value on certain gods with Nemean being changed, so that's only really worth it on tanks. So some other gods will get more value out of this than before. Ninja Tabai. Well, once upon a time, boots were all up here, I would say, because they were so mandatory, but now we have boots pot in late game, so I would say boots are generally A, unless they are particularly strong. We'll get to that. Obsidian, yeah. I would say it's pretty good, but more like... You still see it on a lot of mages more towards late game. But it doesn't really have like anything that's... At the same time, I would say it's a pretty solid item overall. No, yeah, I would put it in A+. Only... Is that even... Yeah, only Hunter's Garb. Also situational. Around here. Around here. Can be good. Can also be not so good, depending on where exactly we are. Yeah, poisoned. Not much to think about there. That's an A+ crit item. Very easy. Polynomicon. Super situational at the moment. I can't say it's trash because there's still like some combo builds where it just does a lot of damage. I guess Morrigan could justify it somewhat, but very hard on the edge to C tier as well. It just doesn't keep up with like Ethereal, Soul Reaver, everything else in my opinion. So yeah. Pridwin is a very good item. I would say Pridwin is an A+ item. It's just slightly above what the average item offers. It just has a good mix of stats for tanks specifically. Pythag is a solid A. It's a good item, good aura effect, but it doesn't really fit into every build. And since they took the CDR away from that, it just lost in that regard. You can still fit it into builds, and due to the passive, it's unlikely to like slip below A. But at the same time, it's very hard to fit in again. Kins is always a solid choice. I would say it's an A tier item, but it's a good A tier item. It doesn't need nerfs, it doesn't need buffs. It's right where it needs to be, really. Rage, I would say, is above that. I would say it's even like, yeah, maybe around here. I would say it's a pretty good crit item still. It's still very rewarding. They're still tweaking the prices because it just performs too well sometimes and stuff. So yeah. Rang does the same thing as Lonos. Haven't really tested enough, but definitely still feels like it's towards the stronger side. Reinforced Greaves and Shoes. Honestly, I'm going to put these into A+. I think with the increased stats, with the 150 health, the price for what you get there is pretty good. And it is a counter item, but it's a good, no, maybe, okay, no, maybe not quite A+, but I would say A upper end. That's more like it, yeah. Like, it's, you're getting a lot of value out of this in situations where enemies have dots. And I don't think that can be understated, really. Because, yeah, even against gods like Tsukiyomi, it's pretty nice. Relic Dagger is very good. Not much to say. It's not as common anymore, but that's just because some other items have gotten better and some counters are very necessary at the moment. When there's room for it, I would always try and throw it in on a support, especially for those frequent relics. And that brings us to the one and only Ring of Hecate. I would have put this into S+ previously. It's received a nerf now. I will put it into S right now. I do think it's still very strong. How exactly it plays out, we'll have to see with more time in this patch to get a feel if this nerf significantly changed something. I could imagine it also remaining in S. Really just depends on, yeah, on the specifics and how it'll actually turn out to be. Rod of Asclepius, super situational. Super situational. Like, really, towards the end here. You can use it sometimes, but I think it's just, compared to its physical counterpart, which is Catchy held up here, it just doesn't really offer that much. And the healing effect is nice, but then this is typically built on the healer themselves, and then everyone will see it. And anti-heal is also a big thing anyways. It does work against that, but it doesn't stack with it Catch Heal either. I would always try to get a physical character on your team to build Catch Heal, which is a great item overall, over building Rod of Asclepius. Not much to say about Rod of Tahuti. Just increases your damage and it's nice as such. Runeforged, very situational, very rarely used, but also not trash. So we're putting it down here somewhere. Runic Shield used to be higher, used to be up here somewhere. I would say it fell off a bit. I think it's just a normal A item, like around here now. It's just, it does its job and it's used for that, but nothing crazy anymore. Shadow Steel Shuriken, I have a hard time placing because I think crit items are generally strong at the moment. I do think that anti-heal items are strong at the moment, but I don't think that relying on crit for anti-heal is good. Because if the crit doesn't happen before the healing happens, then it's not going to have an effect. And that's much easier to apply with an ability, which is more reliable. At the same time, there are builds that reach very high crit values at the moment, like 90-100%. So with those builds, you can kind of justify it more, and that makes it very hard. I think I'm going to put it into A. I think it's not terrible, but it's also not the staple crit item that you will build over others. Hang on a second. Why is that here? Hold on. Am I lost? This does not exist anymore, unless I'm confused right now. Did they put the icon on some other item, or am I just being bamboozled right now? I'm pretty sure that's not in the game anymore for quite a while. Let me just verify that real quick, that this icon is not used by something else, and I'm just not like confusing myself here. But no, it is not. It's literally just a relic of the past here, and I was wondering like, what is this doing here? Okay, cool. Yeah, that stays down there. Shield of Regrowth. Yeah. Huh. Also situational, also. With his friend, with his healing friend here. Doesn't really work for that many characters that well, but then there's Hercules, for example, who makes very good use of it. Naja. So that's a few, but just not that many. Shifted Shield actually pretty solid at the moment, not much to say about it. It's just a good item. In terms of boots here, the mage boots somewhere in the middle, I guess. Like Shoes of Focus, they're good, they're good. But they are not as good as the Shoes of the Magi, which received quite a few buffs over time and now have lifesteal and high power, which gives you good early clear, and it works well with the other lifesteal items at the moment. So I would say those go right into A+. Shugon's Kusari, situational but a solid item choice for like builds for like amateurs who especially just generally solo AA builds. You can kind of implement that towards the end. I would say it's not like a core item or something. It's more like a good situational, like around here. Silver Branch, in my opinion, actually pretty good item. Might gain more value if crit builds lose out a bit. So this could easily go up. This could easily go towards A+. I'm tempted to put it there. Yeah, we'll put it there just with the chance of Odysseus Bow going up this patch. So I'm tempted to put it there, or the upcoming patch, and just see how it goes just toward the end here, and maybe it'll work out, or maybe I'll just go down to A. Soul Eater, very strong on a lot of assassins at the moment. No complaints there. At the same time, also not that hard to counter in general, and not like overwhelmingly strong. So it's just an A+. Soul Gem is a good item on many mages at the moment, and that's what it is. It's a good item. Like, it's not the core item, but it's like something that you can put in place of some pen items and stuff, and it's good for that. Soul Reaver is also a good item, and I think it goes in A as well. Sovereignty is also a good item, and it can go right next to Hardwood, because now I think they're more close in value. Spear of Desolation is also a good item for mages. Very, very normal. Like, not much to say about it. Can be used by supports as well, which is fun in the late game for the cooldown reduction. So for cooldown reduction focused characters, this is probably better than Chronos Pendant most of the time. Spear of the Magus is also a good item. I would say it's a bit more effective. I think Spear of the Magus is more of an A+ item. Just the extra damage increase is still very good. And even with the nerf, I would say it still has a fair bit of value. Even though I imagine that statistically the win rate would put it closer to Spear of Desolation. But I think just like, if you coordinate it well with the team, this thing does a lot still. Okay, Spectral Armor. Spectral Armor is like the anti-crit item, but I don't know. It never really impressed me. Like, I gotta think I gotta look it up for a second. I actually don't know what the exact stats on Spectral Armor are right now, because it's just an item where I always like, every time I look at it, I'm like, yeah, I could get that, or I could get something like Nemean that counters the entire team and not just that one guy building crit. Well, okay, yeah, 50% bonus damage instead of 100% bonus damage, and 65 physical protection. It's just like, yeah, it has good stats. It has 200 health as well. So yeah, no, I can't downplay that. So I would say, with Nemean being nerfed, this will probably see a bit more light of day, and I'll put it like here, maybe. Should be a little bit more popular as an anti-crit item now than it was before. So yeah, well, we'll give it credit where credit's due, I guess. Spirit Robe is a good item. I feel like it's just a bit of a second to Mantle of Discord at the moment. Just so very few situations where I prefer Spirit Robe because it's just less raw defense, and then Mantle of Discord also comes with a extra CC. It's still okay, I guess, but really, normally gold is not hard to come by. That's actually, I'm gonna put it into B, but very at the top. It is situational. So the point is that the difference between Mantle of Discord and Spirit Robe for the longest time was the price. And it was like, yeah, okay, you could go Spirit Robe, or you could save up longer from Mantle of Discord, and that's a problem. But gold is so much more accessible. Like I've been looking at what point of the game you reach max gold or like a full bill, and it's been lower and lower and lower with Totem of Ku, with the new Chalice and everything. You just get so much more gold overall that it's just less of a concern when it comes to builds. Like, builds are finished much quicker, and therefore Spirit Robe is kind of less valuable in comparison because the gold is less of an issue. Staff of Merden, also situational one, but a good one at that, I would say. Yeah, it's not something you will see super frequently, but it depends a lot on the guard, but it's good where it works. Stonecutting Sword is a solid A in my opinion for AA Assassins, just always still a good choice, even with Serrated Edge being around, it's still very much there. Yeah, just leave it there. Son of Binding, good item, got a bit of a buff lately. I would say it's like one of the better support items, but not like crazy. We just like put it towards the beginning of A. And this is why we have C tier, Son of Fal. I don't know why this item exists in its current state. Just rework it, just throw it away. I don't know. We'll do whatever with it, but like it should not exist in its current form. Son of Gaia should exist. It's a good item. It's an A tier item. Not much to say here. It's just, you know, it does still suffer from the enter here, but it's a lot nicer overall when it comes to sustain now. It just found more value in more recent metas, with everyone else like having ways to heal up. You can kind of counter it with that, like just sustain yourself as well and everything. Talaria, this pains me. Or Travels and Talaria both actually. These ones, I would say, are like so close to the chopping block, because the value they had over other items were on one hand more movement speed, that is still there, but it's just like 4% now, which is really not that much. On the other hand, the value was that you have MP5 on this, which it still does have, but at the same time the other boots like Warrior Tabe, for example, has mana now, 100 flat mana, so that just decreases the value of MP5 here in comparison, even though you will still get more mana over time if you end up walking around on low mana for an extended period of time. But it's just not like mana hungry guts in early game just don't get that much more of this anymore. And that only really leaves you with extra movement speed out of base, which I guess can be useful for solo if you specifically want to avoid teleport. But then if you run these in solo, you're also kind of putting yourself behind because you're having these boots in solo, which really don't have that much to offer stat-wise at this point. I think with the movement speed decrease, they should revert the damage decrease, so they increase the damage a little bit again and keep it at the low movement speed. I think then they would have value as like an in-between item, but right now they're just like bottom of the barrel for both, and just kept alive by the passive, and otherwise they'd be C tier. Talisman of Energy, situational for sure, but super fun at that, and I think this is a pretty solid item in some situations. Talkine's Ring. Well, that's a tough one. I think Talkine's Ring is a good ring, but at the same time I do think it's the worst of the rings for quite a few guards. Like, you'd often see this one being skipped in favor of, say, Typhon's Fang especially. I am going to say A. I do think it's not quite B tier, but I'm also not going to put it like well above that or anything. Crusher, solid item, gets A as well. Maybe a little bit higher in A, maybe like middle of A. Executioner, I don't know when you would want to build Executioner. No, it's just not worth it. Like, you're not, like, no one that builds AA focused items is so team oriented that they will build Executioner. Like, I cannot see the situation. Like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is someone out there who will figure out a way to make Executioner work. But I don't think there is really a niche for it right now. Not with these guys reigning supreme. Not with these like high tier, easy access pen options for AA guards and for hunters. Just no reason to pick it, honestly. Like, I get that it stacks beyond that, but at the same time, it doesn't synergize with each other. So if the synergy was better, I would see the value of Executioner more. But as long as it's not, no, I really don't see it. I really think that Executioner needs something. The Sledge is a very good item. I would say it's, I don't think it's like S tier. Like, I think some people think it's really, really, really good. I would say it's good, but it's not necessary in all situations. It's kind of like Heartseeker, so like it's very strong where it's useful. A lot of solos can use it very well. How I said, they might nerf it, but it's not like the prior nerf thing or something. They kept it that way for a reason as well. So I would say it's like here. Titan's Bane, good item. I would say it's not quite the same level as Obsidian Shard because many assassins use their abilities differently. So it's not quite as effective. So I'm more like leaning towards A, but like a good A item. Yeah. Toxic Blade, actually a pretty good item, honestly. I would say this is an A+ item. It's an anti item. It's not quite as good as these guys, but I would say it's still among the good AA items. And a lot of solos can actually use this effectively as well now, so that's a big bonus. Transcendence is an A tier item. Where's Devils? Let's put it right next to it. It's just the same type of stuff. Typhon's Fang, obviously still a very strong item. It got a nerf. Could possibly go down to A+ here. I'll do that. You know what? I'll do that. I put it at the beginning of A+, and then this is also like one where the verdict is still out. It could be that it goes up, or it could stay there. It could go down depending on how drastic the nerf feels in the long run. I think it's still gonna have a lot of good stats, so I could also imagine it just going back to S or something. Oh god, what's this helm even called? I was gonna say Celestial Legion, but it's not. It's, yeah, can't think of it. I keep thinking Jade Empress, but that's not Jade Empress. It's the helm that buffs the minions. It actually got a buff recently, and it's interesting. I haven't really tested it since. I will put it in situational for now. I have to see. I put it towards like the end of situational for now. And once I remember the name, we can talk about it. That is awkward. I actually don't remember the name at all. Oh god, I looked it up. Or like I had looked at that item specifically before this video. Just can't get it. Like I hate that all the helmets are like same color, same style, and then weird names along with it. Whatever. Void Shield. Good, but not as good anymore, I would say. It's like end of A. Yeah, it's like some guards can make good use of it, but many times there are just other better options as well. Whitestone, I think, keeps a bit more value compared to that. I would say it's also an A tier item, but I would say it's more towards the top of A. It just has some really nice combinations for damagey support builds with like Spear from the Magus and stuff like that. So I see myself using this more often, basically. Warrior Turbine, good boots at the moment, very good. So I think the mana buff actually made them slightly better. I'll actually say like they're like at the beginning of A tier kind of. So pretty good. Warrior's Blessing, for the first time since ever, it's not above A. It's just an A item. It's just a normal blessing. It goes right next to Assassin's Blessing. Like how long have I waited for this day? We are finally seeing other builds in solo, and that's like the difference is we're still seeing Assassin's Blessing on every assassin or Guardian's Blessing on every support, but that's because these items are forced in terms of stats to be mandatory for their roles, because you literally cannot do your job. You cannot clear the jungle without dying, and you cannot get your gold and your sustain in lane without Guardian's Blessing. With Warrior's Blessing, that dependence was never there. It's just a strong item for laning, where you can also build Mage's Blessing, which some solo laners do now. Some aggressive solo laners, or you could build Hunter's Blessing or something. So yeah, this one is finally in a balanced place, in my opinion, and you can actually get away without it. You can actually get away with Lifesteal builds on very few gods like Hades. You can get away with Mage's Blessing start. So very, very cool. Finally, balance in the blessing section. Wind Demon, I would say, is similar-ish to Poison Star, but not as good as Poison Star, so I will just put that in A. Actually, Poison Star I want more towards the front here. I think Poison Star is better than a lot of these, more like here. Winged Blade, situational counter, but a very good situational counter. I am tempted to put it next to Mage's Blessing because, it's a few less counters that it has. Like, it's end of A. Witchblade, honestly, a good counter item, but honestly, not good enough stat-wise, in my opinion, in some situations. Witchblade just screams wanting different defensive stats on it. Let me actually quickly check the current stats just so I don't slip up there. But yeah, right now it has 250 health, and I feel like it just should have like a minor amount of physical defense or something. Because of the attack speed reduction, but then again, I get that it's also meant to counter magical ADCs. But I would rather see this item having less attack speed on it, because it comes with 20% attack speed and more attack speed reduction on it. Because this is an item you're not just going to build on solo laners that use basic attacks themselves. It's an item that technically you might want to build on a support or something, and most supports don't really get all that much out of getting 20% attack speed. So I think that would be a good way to adjust that. And that is it, because this item is no longer in the game. That is our complete list here of the current / upcoming patch in terms of items. Obviously, it's a tier list, it's a lot of opinion, so some things are more based on what I feel like they will be after this patch. Some things are more based on where they are right now. Some things are just because I like them a little bit better than others. Keep that in mind with every tier list, right? I think it's always good to just see how you feel about it and what your opinion is compared to it, and then be like, okay, yeah, that's something that I maybe not paying too much attention to right now because I haven't really thought of it yet, but now I might have another look at it, or maybe on another item you might completely disagree and be like, yeah, no, I like that much better, but that's fair enough. That's how tier lists work. And yeah, I will not fight anyone over their opinion unless you're going to tell me that for some reason anti-heal is the worst stat in the game or something. Then maybe that might be enough for me to completely disagree. But yeah, this is the current situation. For S+, we have it down to C. We have actually filled out all the gaps. In hindsight, I mean, I don't know. Could there have been a purpose in a D tier? Like a C? No, not really. I think maybe to put Stone of File one lower, but I guess you can get that without it. I can just say, like, you could put this on D because it's even worse. Outside of that, I think this covers it all pretty well. And with that, thank you guys very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, feel free to click the sub button and maybe the bell so you get notified of other upcoming videos. Tomorrow that will be countering Tsukuyomi. And other than that, see you for the next one soon. Sloth out.